In our last segment, we talked about George Friedrich Handel, who was born in 1685. Today, we're talking about the other prominent composer from the Baroque period, Johann Sebastian Bach, who was also born in the year of 1685. Bach passed away a little before Handel in the year of 1750. Oftentimes, people say, with the death of Bach, so ends the Baroque period. On your second test, you'll need to know three sets of dates: the Baroque period dates, 1600 to 1750, and then Handel and Bach's birth and death year. Handel, 1685 to 1759, and now Bach, 1685 to 1750. But it's really with the death of both Bach and Handel that brings a close to the Baroque period. Like we did with Handel, I'm going to take you through Bach's timeline and then talk to you about the cantata. Bach was born in a very, very small town called Eisenach in Germany in 1685, but he was born to an extremely musical family. His father, Johann Ambrosius Bach, was a violinist, and so Bach's first instrument was the violin. He was being trained by his father. But unfortunately, Bach lost his parents at the age of 9. He lost his mom, and at 10, his father passed away. And then he was sent to live with an older brother. The older brother's name was Johann Christoph Bach. Christoph was an organist at his town church in Ohrdruf. So Bach starts to learn the organ, and this is going to quickly become Bach's primary instrument. The older brother probably was very glad to see his younger brother grow up and get married and start his adult life, because he quickly was outshining the older brother in terms of his talent on the instrument. In 1707, Bach married his second cousin. This was more of a common practice back in the day. You didn't have to change the monogram on the towels, so to speak. But he married his second cousin, Maria Barbara Bach, and then the next year, he starts his official employment. Bach was employed by 3 different cities in Germany. His first position was in the city of Weimar, and he was under the rule of the Duke of Saxe. Here, Bach primarily was working on instrumental compositions, solo compositions for himself to perform. The Duke thought of Bach as a feather in his cap. So whenever he was entertaining people, or whenever he was going to meet with other cities, other dukes, other dignitaries, he would take Bach along, and he could show that he had the best musician. Bach, of course, was so superior to any of the other performers. He was the most virtuosic performer from the Baroque period. And so he was able to really showcase that through his organ virtuosity. Well, Bach, though, throughout his life, the number of children start to grow, and he's always thinking about a better salaried position, a better place for education for his children. And so he was able to get a new job in the city of Curtin. Well, after he was given the appointment, he still was under the contract rule of the Duke of Saxe in Weimar, so he went to the Duke and told him that he would be leaving. Well, the Duke didn't like that at all and thought that Bach was a little too stubborn and too pushy. So the Duke imprisoned Bach for a month, and so Maria Barbara and the children had to go on and set up their residence in Curtin and wait for Bach's arrival. After the Duke let Bach out after a month, he did move to Curtin and start his second position. Here, Bach is doing more instrumental compositions. He writes more for himself. He also writes a series of concerti called the Brandenburg Concerto. There was a court opening in Brandenburg that he was trying for, but his musical offering, the Brandenburg Concerto, were not even acknowledged with a nice thank you note, so he was passed over there. But his time in Curtin was very difficult. Maria Barbara passed away when she was giving birth to what would have been their 7th child. Of those 7 children, 4 of them survived. Bach was away touring with the Duke there from Curtin, and did not know that his wife and his 7th child had passed away until he returned home. So now a widower with 4 children to raise, Bach now was searching for someone else to help him out. And he found help and fell in love with the soprano there in Curtin. Her name was Anna Magdalena Wilke. She was the daughter of a court trumpeter. With Anna Magdalena, Bach had 13 children. So between the 2 wives, he had 20 kids. Of the 20, 10 of them survived into adulthood. So Bach certainly was very interested in finding a better salary and certainly a better education town for his children. And he did so after his time in Curtin. In 1723, he gets the position in Leipzig, and he stays there for the rest of his life. In Leipzig, he's writing music for the town, but his primary pursuits are for the church. And here is when he starts to delve heavily into church music and starts to write cantatas for the Lutheran church there. While he was there in Leipzig, he took it upon himself to write a complete cantata cycle for the complete church liturgical year on 4 different occasions. And so this allowed Bach then the opportunity, once those 4 years had passed, to reuse cantatas and maybe change them up as he saw fit. In addition to the 4 cantata cycles, he wrote 2 passions, the St. John Passion and the St. Matthew Passion. Remember, the Passion is a special type of oratorio, but these are based on the life of Christ coming from the Gospels. In addition to his writings and his organ performances, he's also known at this time as an organ repairman. And this showcases Bach's temperament. Sometimes a church would hire Bach to come and repair their organ. Before he arrived, a fee had been arranged, so he would repair the organ, and when he was finished, of course, he was expected his payment. Sometimes these places did not have the money to pay him right then. They would give him a portion and say, "We'll send you the other." Well, that didn't suit Bach. He would go back and he would destroy the organ and leave it in the state that he originally had found it, and he would storm back off to his home in Leipzig. And Bach always was dealing with people in that manner. There's a Bach biography video that I will sometimes show, and in it he talks about one particular year that there's not enough people who had died. He had remembered from the previous winter that there was this number of funerals that he had, but this particular year there weren't as many, so he was losing money. He was always a very calculated individual. The members of the choir that he was working with, he was pleased with some. He thought that he could work with others, but then there was others that in the choir and the ensemble that just were worthless to him. And so he was always compartmentalizing these people that he worked with during his life. A very, very difficult person to work with, but a high perfectionist was Bach. And so he expected everybody around him to do the same work. He passed away in 1750, and he is buried next to the Thomas Schuler Church that he survived. Bach is different from the other Baroque composers because he did not strive to work on contemporary mediums like the opera as much, but he was more concerned about perfecting music, perfecting things of old and doing them better than anybody else. On your list, on your study guide list, you have the Well-Tempered Clavier, the Brandenburg Concerto, the St. Matthew and St. John Passions. Remember, those are special oratorios. The Mass in B minor, which is a Mass, and those are the ones of Bach on your study guide. In addition to some of these, he wrote over 250 cantatas for the Lutheran Church, and this makes him our father of the cantata. Let me tell you a little bit about the cantata. It is the musical worship service for the Lutheran Church, and it is the corollary to the Mass. The Mass is the musical worship service of the Roman Catholic Church. Remember, Martin Luther was a composer for some of the first cantatas back in the Renaissance. Usually the cantata had 7 or 8 numbers to it, and it was very similar to an opera and an oratorio. Used recitatives and arias and small ensembles and chorus. It's not an entertainment form, so it doesn't start off with an overture. So the overture is not used, but every other ingredient that we've talked about previously is. But there was one special number in the cantata called the chorale, or the Lutheran chorale. Typically, this is what Bach would begin with. These Lutheran chorales today are the predecessors to the hymns of the church. They observe strict homophony and are very pleasing. And I think that the Lutheran Church really loved these so much because they were the most similar to the music of the Roman Catholic Mass. You have to remember that there are people during Bach's life who are may have started their life in the Roman Catholic Church, or maybe they were just a generation or two removed. And so people found the Lutheran chorale very comforting to them. And so Bach and the other composers would start first with that, and then oftentimes that chorale melody or tune would be used at other moments throughout the cantata. The cantata that I would like for you to listen to is called Wachet auf, or Sleepers Awake, and I want you to listen to two numbers. The opening chorale fantasia, or chorale fugue, and then the fourth number, which is the Lutheran chorale. Listen to the Lutheran chorale first. You have a ritornello form. Ritornello is when you have an instrumental refrain, so you're going to hear bum ba-da-dum ba-dum 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 ba-da-dum ba-dum ba-dum in the beginning. Then you'll have in solo unison just the tenors. They'll sing their line, and then that ritornello will come back around. So it's back and forth between the instrumental refrain and the music. In the opening chorale, you have text that says, "Wake, arise, loud call the voices of watchmen so high in the tower." So listen for the words arise and high and call, because those are the ones that are given the word painting moments in this. Let me tell you a little bit about Wachet auf, the Sleepers Awake cantata. It's based on the scripture from the book of Matthew, and it talks about the parable of the 10 virgins. So this is going to be a cantata that's performed late in the church liturgical year, maybe in October or early November, somewhere around then. And so the parable goes that there were 10 virgins, 5 wise and 5 foolish. The 5 wise virgins filled their lantern full of oil, and then they took excess with them. The 5 foolish filled up their lanterns full of oil, but they did not take any excess. Well, why did they even do this in the first place? They were waiting for the bridegroom to come. So the story is this: the bridegroom is going to be coming, but they don't know what hour or day. They don't know when his arrival will be. And so there's a watchman who is in the tower watching in the sea for the arrival of the bridegroom. And at midnight, he sees the boat coming into the shore, so he blows his trumpet to alert the virgins to go down to greet the bridegroom. Well, all the virgins go down, and the ship gets delayed, so the oil in their lanterns all burn out. But the 5 wise ones have excess, so they can refill their lanterns, right? Well, the 5 foolish ones, they have to go back home to get their oil. And while they've left, the bridegroom arrives, and he invites the 5 wise virgins into the wedding feast, and then he locks the door. And when the 5 foolish virgins come back, they're not allowed entrance. And so that's what this text is all about for this particular cantata. It's about us preparing ourselves for the second coming of Christ, but Bach's using it in a twofold way. Since it's coming at the end of the church liturgical year, he's also using this as, well, Lutherans, you need to get prepared for the coming Advent season that's going to begin our church calendar year as well. So then we have this text associated with that. And so, Wachet auf, please listen to the first number and to movement number 4. And these are the ones that are going to be on your first listening exam.